Man, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I hope that my internet connectivity is operating well this morning. I hope and pray that each and every one of you that will join us on the live on this morning, as well as on the replay, are enjoying an amazing day in the Lord. For this is the day that the Lord has made, and we are rejoicing and we're glad in it. Amen. I just want to give a few moments for a few more people to come on in the room. Thank you so much to each and every one of you that are coming into the room on this morning. I want to give a very special thank you to Fancy and her team at Swag Her Magazine for allowing me this wonderful opportunity to join you all on Swag Her Magazine page on Facebook each and every Monday morning and Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you to those that are coming in the room also from the various Laquita's Toolbox communities on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Thank you guys so much for popping in the room. I see we have a few people coming in the room on this morning. As you come in the room, please go ahead and jump in the comment section. We absolutely love the engagement. Let me know who you are and where you're from, and we can just jump right into the conversation on this morning. Many of you have been following us for weeks, and I'd like to thank you for that as well. Hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons so that we can get this broadcast out to as many people as possible. If this is your first time coming in on the live, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to come onto the live. And please let me know who you are in the comment section. Like I said, let me know who you are and where you're from. And if you like what you hear, please, please, please hit that like, share, and subscribe and get these broadcasts out on this morning. And, on this morning, I want to continue on just a little bit in some of our previous conversations. And this morning, the topic is how to overcome growth gaps. Thank you so much for popping in the room and getting in the chat with us on this morning. Win for Life, out of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Thank you. Am I saying your name correctly? Venetia? I hope I am. Patrice Scott from Baton Rouge. Thank you so much for coming in the room on this morning. Appreciate you for jumping in the room. Today, I'm talking about how to overcome growth gaps. And before we can overcome a growth gap, we've got to Awesome, 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 Miss Vanessa. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate you. So happy that I got your name right. I want to make sure that I get everyone's name correct. You know, in the topic today is how to overcome growth gaps. The first thing we have to do in order to overcome a growth gap is to first identify what that growth gap is. And once we identify what the growth gap is, acknowledging that gap, and then coming up with a plan to help us to overcome the growth gaps that we can experience in our life. And if you're saying, okay, Laquita, what is a growth gap? There are about 8 growth gaps by definition. And I'll list all 8, but today we're only going to talk about hopefully, if time permits, we'll talk about 3 of them. But there are 8 growth gaps. Some of you may know, and many of you may not. I am a certified speaker coach and facilitator certified through the John Maxwell team. And he has this amazing book called 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And in that, we learn a lot about what growth gaps are and how we can overcome those growth gaps. One growth gap, and I'll list them pretty quickly here. One growth gap is called the assumption gap. Then there's the knowledge gap, the timing gap, the mistake gap, the perfection gap, the inspiration gap, the comparison gap, and the expectation gap. Those are 8 growth gaps. Now, when you're giving yourself an honest self-assessment, you're looking at your life from a personal and professional standpoint, but I like to more emphasize on our personal growth and development, because I believe that as we continuously grow in the areas of personal growth and development, that growth and that maturity will automatically pour over into our personal lives. So if we are focusing on our personal growth and development, you'll see and you'll hit the goals that you have designed for yourself in your professional life. But when we're looking at and we're identifying what those growth gaps are, and I'll go over them again because I know I did that really quickly. Those growth gaps are the growth gap traps. They're growth gap traps. There are 8 of them, and they are the assumption gap, the knowledge gap, the timing gap, the mistake gap, the perfection gap, the inspiration gap, the comparison gap, the expectation gap. And these are all growth gap traps. And just listening to the name of the growth gap trap can kind of give you an idea of what that growth gap trap is. And as I said, I'm going to try to hit maybe 3 of those growth gap traps on today. And as I begin to dive into them, if you've heard one and you said, okay, Laquita, I want to know more about that growth gap trap because I know for sure that applies to me. I have a hard time in that area. Get in the comment section and let me know, out of the 8 growth gap traps that I've just listed, which one of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or maybe all 8, which one resonate with you the most as something that hinders you and your ability to continue to move forward and accomplish the goals and dreams that you set for yourself. If you have some, or if just listening to those titles, and I'll give you those titles again. If there is one in particular that you want to make sure that I address today, get in the comment section and write that out. That's the assumption gap, the knowledge gap, the timing gap, the mistake gap, the perfection gap, the inspiration gap, the comparison gap, and the expectation gap. Those are the 8 gap traps that can hinder us in our personal growth and development. The assumption gap, if we'll just start out at number 1, most of us have been under that assumption as adults in life. The assumption gap is, I will grow and I will mature and I will get better with age. Like, that growth is just automatic and it's going to happen. We naturally assume sometimes that older people should be wiser and smarter and further along in life. And we all know that that assumption is the lowest form of knowledge. And sometimes you'll meet people who you have assumed should know better and do better. And we come to find out that, oh no, that assumption is not correct. That's the assumption gap. When we assume that just because I'm existing and I'm doing the right things that I think need to be done, that I will grow. That's not what happens. Growth is intentional. Growth is intentional. Growth requires strategies. Growth requires consistency. But most importantly, growth is not automatic. It does not automatically come simply because I celebrate a new revolution around the sun or around the moon, or however you want to call it. I see we have someone in the comments here. Perfection gap. Absolutely. So let's talk about the perfection gap. I can raise both hands and both feet, Miss Stephanie, and talk about how the perfection gap has caused me so many issues in my life over the years, with learning how to address that perfection gap and learning how to overcome it. And that perfection gap says that I have to find the best way before I can start anything, before I can make a move, before I can pass go, collect my $200. I have to make sure that all of my I's are dotted, all of my T's are crossed, and that I have about 15 contingency plans just in case. That is the perfection gap. And that perfection gap has kept so many people from moving so much further in their life. And even if you're one that prides yourself in perfectionism actually hinders us more than it helps us. When we're looking at the perfection gap, it prevents us from getting started. And getting started is the win. Above all else, making that first move and putting one foot in front of the other, that's how we're going to achieve that perceived perfection. Standing still and planning on top of planning on top of planning. And don't get me wrong, planning is necessary. You want to make sure that you have planned things out. But if we're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting on that perfect moment of those perfect set of circumstances before we can make one move forward to accomplish the thing that we want to accomplish, 9 times out of 10, we'll always be waiting, or the opportunity that we needed has passed us by. Let me say that again. Perfection gap can sometimes cause us to miss the opportunities because we won't move forward. We won't take one step forward. Where when we have the perfection gap, it says, I will only move when I have a perfect plan. Perfection gap says, I will only move when I have a perfect plan. But the perfect plan happens while you're moving. The perfect points of growth happen while you're moving, while you're doing. You have to put some movement to the things that you're doing and not wait on those perfect moments. Here we go. Stephanie says 15-step plan doesn't always work. No, it doesn't. Because it's great to have your plan written out. And again, hear me. I'm not saying that we're not planning. I'm not saying that we're not having strategies. What I'm saying here is don't allow perfectionism and waiting for all things perfect to come into an alignment before you will make one move. In order to learn, in order to grow and to reach that state of perfection that you're looking for, there has to be some movement in that. Growth requires movement. And if there is no, and if the only movement that is taking place is in your mind, that's not necessarily movement. I have the thought, I have the idea, it's in my head, I see the vision, I've written it down, I've made the plan. Now let me walk out step one. Because in walking out step one, I may find that the areas that I thought needed to happen don't necessarily need to happen. I can figure out where my plan needs to be tweaked and how it needs to be tweaked because I'm actually moving forward. Plan works while you're moving. Absolutely. The plan works best while you are moving. Staying still and staying stagnant will not help us to get to our destinations. It will not help us get our desired results. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for bringing in and allowing me to have that conversation with you today about the perfection gap. But if we go back to gap number one, which is the assumption gap, the assumption gap says, I assume I will grow automatically. And if one assumes that he or she will automatically grow, what is the likelihood of that outcome? The likelihood of that is they won't grow. I mean, we may get taller, we may get wider, those things are going to happen. But the maturity that you assume will happen, the growth that you assume will happen, because life lessons are good lessons. But when I become intentional about wanting to grow, when I become intentional about identifying the areas in my life that I need to work on, that means I'm not just sitting around waiting for it to happen because I get older and life is going to teach me. Life will teach you some things. But when we are intentional, our growth happens quicker. We put some flames under that. We put some fire to that growth. And how can you know, the question is then, how do I know if I'm growing or not? What kind of measuring stick can we use to determine if we are growing and how we're growing? There are measurables, there are tools in place that can help us understand how we're growing, if we're growing, in the direction that we want to grow in, the areas in our life that we need to address that are growth gap areas. Though there are absolutely some great tools that can help us get there. One of the tools that I use with my clients is the Maxwell method of DISC. It's a personality assessment, but what it also addresses as well is some strengths and weaknesses that we have in our communication. And communication is oftentimes a growth area for everybody. Learning how to communicate, growing in emotional intelligence, learning how to actively listen is all a part of our communication skills. And that is always a growth area in the life of a human, no matter where you are in your level of success and your success journey. That's an area that we should always address. And as we're addressing that, that tool that I use called the Maxwell Method of DISC is a very handy tool to help identify some things, some growth gap areas. And also it helps with bringing together a personal growth and development plan so that we can address the other areas in our life. Stephanie says that stagnant is comfortable, but if we think about it, it stinks. Stagnation stinks. Absolutely. A pond is a cute thing to have, but a man-made pond is stagnant water. And as we know, nothing grows in stagnant water. Things die in stagnant water. But a pond that is natural, it has an inlet or an outlet, if you will, where there's a source for the water to continue to come in and it's flowing. And that's how you always have nice wildlife and vegetation in there. And it's moving. It's continuously moving. Stagnation does stink. But when we're continuously growing, when we're continuously recognizing the areas where we are need growth, and we're continuously celebrating the areas where we have grown, that consistent movement, not only does it encourage us to continually grow, but it's also another way that we can measure and others can measure our growth, because nobody likes to consistently do something over and over again and not be able to recognize any progress, or not have others even so much to recognize any progress that is taking place in our life. So we want to make sure that we come up with a measuring tool that will allow us to rejoice in our progress, as well as those that are around us and connected to us, friends, family, colleagues, clients, are also able to recognize that growth. The second growth gap that I want to talk about today is the knowledge gap. And that knowledge gap says, I don't know how to grow. And I believe the last time that I was on live last week, that question was brought up. Like, how do I know when I need to grow? How do I know, I don't know what to do. This sounds great what you're talking about, Laquita, but how do I do that? How do I even begin to discover how to do that? And even on last week, as I said, not knowing how to grow can be a powerful reason to simply start and to try to grow. Like, it's okay if you don't know how. The fact that you've acknowledged that there are areas that I know I need growth in, but I don't know how. Or I know I need growth, but I don't even know what areas in my life need growth. When we come to that realization or that acknowledgement that I need growth, that's a victory right there. And we should celebrate that. Partnering together with the right resources can help us to figure out the growth areas in our life. If one does not know how to grow, if you don't know how to grow, then what we need to do at that point is to ask people in our circle about personal growth and what you can do to begin your personal growth journey. For me, one of the things that I did was I began to pick up books. I began to look at podcasts. I began to look at YouTube videos. I began to just dig in and find out more about what is this personal growth? Why is it necessary? Is it really all that it's cracked up to be? Or are these people that I've been seeing and listening to, are they just trying to get my money? Let me just be real and transparent. I went to do some research to make sure that I wasn't about to waste a lot of money and a lot of time on something that wasn't going to benefit me. And what I found out is that it not only benefits me, but it is something that I should consistently do, seek out personal growth as long as the Lord allows me to draw breath. Again, not knowing how to grow, that's okay. That is 100% okay. Not knowing how to grow is 100% okay. What we do from there, that not knowing is the powerful tool or the powerful reason that we need to start to research and dig and find out more about personal growth. And there's tons of great resources, free and low cost resources that can help you with that, with learning more about personal growth, why it's important. Tons of great free resources, even if you Google it, to go out and take some assessments, the various different types of assessments that can help you understand more about how I think, how I communicate, why I communicate this way, how I communicate with others. There's so many great tools that we can use to help us in this growth journey. And if you do not know how to grow, the best thing that we can do is ask for help. Ask someone in your circle, how do I do this? How do I do this? That's the simplest way to put it. How do I do this? Personal growth is necessary. Personal growth is intentional. It is not accidental. It will not just happen just because I'm getting older and time is passing me by and I'm working in this field and this is happening. Personal growth is intentional. It is not accidental. We have to put intentionality behind everything that we do. And the last thing that I want to address in the areas of growth gap traps on today is the timing gap. As I said, there are 8 of them. And we talked today about the perfection gap. Stephanie brought that up, and thank you so much for bringing that up, Stephanie. Stephanie said that the perfection gap was something that resonated with her, and we talked about the perfection gap. We also talked about the assumption gap. We talked about the knowledge gap. And the last thing we're going to talk about on today is the timing gap. The timing gap says it's not the right time to begin. Well, when will be the right time? The timing gap says it is not the right time to begin. So the question is, when will be the right time? In my post today, I wrote about the law of diminishing intent. And I'll read that to you. The law of diminishing intent. And with that, the law of diminishing intent is pretty straightforward. With that, the law of diminishing intent, it says, the longer you wait to do something you should do now, the greater the odds that you will never actually do it. Let me read that for you again. It talks about the law of diminishing intent. The law of diminishing intent states, the longer you wait to do something you should do right now, the greater the odds that you will never actually do it. The law of diminishing intent. And why is that important? Because that works together to overcome the timing gap trap. When we are procrastinating or waiting for that perfect moment because it is not the right time, and truly it may not be the right time, but let's put the pros and the cons out there. What would be the benefits of starting now, and what will be the cons of starting now? And if the good outweighs the bad, is it worth the risk? Because there's always risk involved in whatever we do. There will be nothing that you want to do in life that is risk-free. So is the risk worth the reward? The law of diminishing intent says that the risk is worth the reward. What happens, and ask yourself, the longer that I wait to get this thing done, the longer that I wait to begin my personal growth journey, the longer that I wait to start to do whatever it is that is your heart's desire, what will happen the longer that you wait to begin your journey? That's the question. What will happen the longer that you wait to begin your journey? The timing gap trap says it is not the right time to begin. If that is something that you struggle with consistently, and that is a thought, a fear that creeps up in your mind frequently that prevents you from moving forward with an idea, a plan, an area where you want to grow personally, professionally, start a business, start school, whatever it is, ask yourself these questions. The longer that I wait, how will that benefit me? List out the pros and the cons. What are the benefits of me starting now? What obstacles would I face, or what are the cons of me starting now? If the benefits outweigh the cons, then start now. If the benefits outweigh the cons, then start now, because there's always going to be a risk that is involved. There will never be anything that is done that is risk-free. So are you willing to take that risk to overcome that obstacle in your life to begin to move forward in the direction of your desired result. Today, we've talked about how to overcome growth gap traps. We've identified what 8 growth gap traps are, and we've taken a little bit of time to talk about 4 of those growth gap traps. We've talked about the perfection gap. We talked about the timing gap. We talked about the assumption gap and the knowledge gap. We've talked about those things, just not in great detail, just a little bit to get to answer a couple of questions, and mostly just something to get your mind to thinking. We're all coming into 2023, and we if we haven't started already, we're beginning to look at what can I do in my life and my business in 2023 to help me move forward in the direction of my desired result. How can I accomplish these goals? These are the goals that I've set for myself. How can I create a plan to help me reach those goals? 2023 is a new year. A new you shall arrive in 2023. What are we doing? How are we planning? What systems and strategies do we have in place to help our 2023 become all that our heart desire to be? And I ask and I emphasize to you that personal growth should be included in that plan somewhere in your 2023 plans. Personal growth and development should be included, and frequently included, because personal growth is how we invest back into ourselves. How we invest back into ourselves. We understand investing into our business. We understand even investment into financial vehicles to help our wealth grow. But we are our greatest resource, and we have to take the time to invest into ourselves. Personal growth for me is a part of my intentional self-care. Self-care is a big topic, and we're talking about it everywhere, and we should be. But your personal growth and development, for me, is a key tool in my self-care. Sherry, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you enjoyed this information on today. Thank you so much for jumping in the comments. If there's anything that I've said or you have questions about, please get in the comments. I'm more than happy to address those questions, whether it's right now on the live or as I go back and go through the comments later on today. Personal growth and development is moving forward. Absolutely, Stephanie. Personal growth and development is moving. It's how we continue to move forward. Listen, guys, if you want to know more about personal growth and development and would like to attend an upcoming mastermind that I have, where we're specifically speaking on personal growth and development, and we'll be going into greater detail on the growth gap traps. In the comment section, I've just posted a link to a upcoming mastermind that I have coming up in January on the 15 invaluable laws of growth. And it will be an excellent way to start your personal growth journey, whether you are new to personal growth or whether you are a veteran to personal growth. 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth is an amazing tool. It's an amazing resource that you can use to help you yourself in your personal growth journey. There's a link there to find out more about 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth Mastermind right there in the comment section. Check it out. Have a look, see it. If you have any questions and you follow me on social media, just shoot me a DM and I'll be happy to address those questions for you. And if you're not following me on social media, go ahead and take the time out now to follow me here on Facebook, LinkedIn, subscribe to my YouTube channel, if you will. Whatever your favorite social media platform is, I probably am there. Listen, thank you guys so much for allowing me this opportunity to drop a few nuggets in your ear on this morning. I appreciate you. Thank you again. You guys be blessed and have an amazing, amazing, amazing thank you, Patrice. Amazing rest of your day. I look forward to hearing from you guys and to speaking with you again on next week, Monday. And we'll go more into the power of personal growth and what that looks like and how we can get connected to it. Thank you so much, Patrice. I appreciate you for coming in. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I appreciate your engagement, and thank you so much for popping in on the live this morning. You guys be blessed and have an amazing rest of your day. Take care.